You are here for how to build a great landing page to quickly grow your newsletter. You might be wondering, what the heck do landing pages have to do with email list growth anyway? These are dedicated pages that exist for the purpose of collecting email opt-ins. And what I love about them, and we'll dive deeper into some of these examples a little bit later, is they can range from the very simple, as you'll see, to increasingly levels of complexity. And these kinds of pages are different than a preference center, which is also shown here. Although this is a really nice preference center, if we're talking about preference centers, clear, easy to do. Maybe a different topic for a future webinar, but today we're talking about landing pages that are dedicated to helping you grow your email list. Who are we? Who am I? I'm Justine. I'm the head of strategy and community here at Beefree, and I'm also super excited to introduce someone who has been an email industry friend for like at least a decade now, Dan. We first met when Dan was the director of newsletters at BuzzFeed, and before he had a job of the same title at the New Yorker. Today, Dan runs Inbox Collective, which is a consultancy that helps people mostly in media, newsrooms, nonprofits send newsletters, get the most out of those types of emails. Mike Nelson is also joining us today. Mike is the co-founder of Really Good Emails and our head of growth here at Beefree. Mike joined the Beefree team along with Matt Helbig earlier this year when Beefree acquired Really Good Emails. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dan so he can tell us what's on our agenda today and get us started.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us from all over the world. Really happy to have you here. Want to kick things off by talking agenda. What are we talking about today? Justine gave us a great little overview about why landing pages matter, but today we're going to talk a little bit about why they're a powerful growth tool, elements of a great landing page. We're going to show you some of our favorites. Mike and team have built a MVP, a minimal viable product of a really good emails landing page. This has actually been one of my longstanding gripes with RGE. Love the site, send people their way, and they're like, how do I sign up for the newsletter? I'm like, okay, you gotta go here and click here and do this thing. You gotta do like a little bit of magic to find it. We're gonna show you what they built. And of course, we're gonna save some time at questions at the end. Let's talk a little bit about why landing pages are so powerful though. One is a landing page to grow your newsletter list. There's just one purpose for it. We just wanna get email signups on your list. We just wanna grow your list. They're simple, and the simpler a page is, the simpler the action we want you to take, the better. We can update the messaging on the page to make sure it's as targeted as possible and engaging as possible for the specific audience that we're trying to reach. And of course, you own the landing page. You own the design of it. You own where you show it, the page you're promoting it at, what you want to do afterwards. We'll talk through all these different things. But in a landscape today where so many things are changing, where traffic from SEO is changing, search is certainly changing, algorithmic changes on like social media, lots of things are changing the landscape, and yet these pages, you own them, you control them, you have ownership over them, so they're really powerful because there is no outside player saying, here's what you can or can't do with them. You control it. We'll share this in the chat, but when I think about growth, I think about kind of these 4 quadrants of growth for most organizations: owned, earned, algorithmic, and paid. And I'll talk briefly through each of these. I'll come back to owned in a second. Earned growth are the things that come from relationships you have. You appear on a webinar like this. You speak at a conference. You go on somebody's podcast. You do a partnership with another newsletter to cross-promote each other's work. That can be a really powerful tool for growth. Algorithmic growth, search and social. How do you optimize your pages so that way if you're promoting in a link in bio on Instagram, or you're creating landing pages so that way people are searching for specific phrases and coming to your website to sign up for your newsletter. That can be really powerful. Paid growth, if you're spending money on channels like Facebook or Google to grow your list, that can be a really powerful driver of growth. But it all ties back to this one owned channel. Your website, and in particular, your landing pages. These are places that you have total control over what you say and what you want to do with this audience. And all of these things tie back to a landing page. Now, owned growth landing pages, we're going to get into that so much today. Signups on your header or footer, pop-ups, registration walls, lead magnets. There's all these different ways we can get people signed up for your newsletter. And a lot of them are going to drive people back to these landing pages. So let's take a look at some of these elements of a great landing page. I want to go through one by one through these kind of 5 core things that I see great landing pages do. One is that you have to start with really great copy. The number one mistake that I see people make on a landing page is they haven't given a lot of thought to how to actually promote the newsletter that people are signing up for. So many landing pages I go to, all it says is sign up for our newsletter. No copy about what you're going to get or when you're going to get it. It's not clear exactly who it's for or why this newsletter might be for me. And it's a huge mistake because, let's face it, none of us are out there saying, I wish there were more newsletters that I could sign up for. I wish my inbox had like a little more stuff in it every single day. No, like we want to make sure that if we're going to promote our newsletter, we give people a clear reason why it's going to be valuable. And I think for me, it's these kind of basic elements. What are you going to get and when are you going to get it? If it's a daily newsletter, tell me when. Nice news, great team, a fabulous product they built over the last couple of years. They tell you it's going to show up in your inbox each morning. They're a little vague about that. Some teams will say like 6 a.m., 7 a.m., but in this case, they have readers all across the country, all across the world. So they're sending it, basing this around an American audience. Morning is kind of a safe bet there. That's great. But I know it's going to be daily. And in the morning, I know when to look for it approximately. If you're a local newsletter in Boulder, Colorado, you might want to tell people a specific time, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. But the more specific you can be, is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it twice a week? Is it come morning, afternoon, night? The more specific you can be, the better. Make sure it's clear who this is for. Why are you the ideal reader for this? And give them a clear sense of why. Is the value that it's going to save them time? Is it going to make them money? Are they going to be smarter? Are they going to learn stuff they've never seen before? Are they going to get tips and tricks they're going to use for work? Give them a reason why they should make time for this. Like I said, no one's looking for more newsletters, but if we can give them a clear reason why this is valuable, they might carve out a little bit of space in their inbox for you. I want to make sure there's some sort of proof that this newsletter is valuable. And I really like how Caitlin and this Why We Buy newsletter does this. They have a lot of the elements we just mentioned, the whys, who it's for, but I love that they also have testimonials from experts. And in this case, this newsletter's gotten shouted out by a major industry publication. In this case, it's Forbes. They include that there. There's some proof that this is valuable, that others in the industry, whether your peers or major publications, have said, this is great, you should make time for it. You can also do this other ways, like emphasizing the size of your email list. Hey, join 25,000 other people who read this newsletter every single week. When we get to the RGE example, you'll see a good example of that being used. Another thing that I love, show, don't tell. Showcase a sample of the product or link out. We're going to show an example a little bit later on of how to link out. It's really fun. But if you can showcase the newsletter on the page, that's great. The Washington Post, now they go above and beyond here. If you go to one of their landing pages, you'll actually see a live version that you can scroll through on that right side of the most recent edition. They're overachievers for most folks. A screenshot of a recent example is totally fine. Or you can link out, either or, but I want to see what I'm going to get. There's lots of newsletters, and to be honest, there's a lot of bad newsletters out there. So I want to know that the thing that I'm going to get looks good and seems like something that's going to be worth my time. I also want you to think about an opt-in or verification strategy. Are you using single or double opt-in? Both are okay. There's pluses and minuses to both. That's for a later webinar. But you want to have some sort of clear strategy. Either way, whether you're using single opt-in or someone has to go and click a link afterwards to confirm their email address, I want to make sure you have some sort of verification tool on your list to make sure that the front door is protected and that spam bots, that spam traps, and other bad actors can't get through. That could be some sort of tool like CAPTCHA to make sure, hey, we're seeing a lot of activity from a suspicious source. Let's block them. It could be a third-party verification tool like a Kickbox, Zero Bounce, that sort of thing, to make sure, hey, an email comes through, let's check it against an existing list of email addresses and make sure this is legit. Or a honeypot tool, which is an extra little secret form that only the bots can see. If they fill it out, hey, this is a bot, let's not let them onto our email list. If you don't do this, you may find that your landing page is going to be flooded with bot traffic, with spammy signups. It can cause all sorts of deliverability problems, which are so bad and so hard to fix. So make sure you have a strategy there. And lastly, make sure you're optimizing the page for search and social. This is a huge mistake that I see teams make. They have a page, they create it, and then if they're going to go share it on social media, well, they'll put the link in there, and they haven't added good images, good copy to make it as attractive as possible. So when it pops up in your feed, you go, oh, that looks interesting. I want to make sure there's a clear headline, a call to action, like this is from Boulder Reporting Lab, sign up for the BRL Today newsletter. They have some social proof in the share image up there. Thousands of readers start their day every day with our newsletter. Sign up as well. Same thing is true for search. If someone is searching for, daily headlines, Portland, Maine, well, the Portland Press Herald's done a really good job with very specific landing pages here. They even have the copy in there around, this deal, sign up for daily headlines. It's small, but sign up and get the top stories to begin your day, delivered every day at 5 a.m. Fantastic. I know a little bit more about why I should click through and sign up. Those pages aren't going to drive a ton of traffic, but the traffic they do drive is going to be super engaged because people are really, really excited to sign up. They're looking for something. Let's make it easy to find your newsletter and get them onto your list. With that in mind, Justine, let's share some of our favorites and go through those because there's a lot of great examples to share.
So this is the one that we showed in the initial slides. It's the web dev newsletter from TLDR. The thing that stands out to me is how much value they pack into so many few characters, right? I've got the social proof. There's 350,000 readers. It's one daily email. It's a 5-minute read. What else stands out to the two of you?
It's just like so easy. There's nothing else to do here. You have no other options but to sign up. You'll get distracted in either way.
Something I often think about with these pages is I don't want to give people too many choices for what they can do on the page. Often you'll see a page like this and it's on a website with 50 other links on a sidebar and a nav, and there's a lot of other places they can go. I only want to give people 2 options: sign up or close the window. I don't want to let them really do anything else. So if you're here, you really only have one option. Go sign up for the newsletter. I love how they also made it a little bit more specific too. Developers, what does that mean? Front end, back end, full stack. All right, if I'm reading that and I'm in that category, that's what I do for work, got a pretty clear sense of, oh, this is valuable. Also, most of my peers and maybe some folks who I might be competing with on, for a future job or something like that, probably read this newsletter. I should be on it as well.
I like what Logan's pointing out in the chat too, is that the landing page itself is probably mirroring the premise of the newsletter. So you're really, again, like delivering on that promise. Like not only is our newsletter a 5-minute read, but our landing page is simple as well. So I love that point. So the next one is one of my just personal faves. I used to maybe work at this company, and so know a lot of the people there, and they're awesome. And so I just love the headline. It's not boring. And granted, there could be some social proof on this page to really get the reader's voice confirming that it's not boring. But I love that they have the audacity. I also love that they're humanizing it, right? If you sign up for this newsletter, the person that's pictured here is Matt Patterson. The emails come from Matt. And so I think if you scroll, you do actually see what they call some subscriber reviews kind of below the fold here. You can kind of even scroll through some of these. Ooh, that's a good one. I genuinely look forward to this newsletter each week. Completely joyous experience for the newsletter. Like that's like I don't know, like you get to win some award when someone says that about your emails, right? Or how many of you, when you ask what you do at family, you have to kind of defend your career and say, no, I don't send spam. You can send them to this page and say, no, I put joy in people's inboxes. Anything stand out to the two of you?
The one I like a lot about this, super clear who it's for. I'd love to know when it's going to show up. The other thing, I'd love to know if I come to this page and I wasn't familiar with it, if a friend in the industry shared it with me, I'd love to know who Matt is on this page. Because
why should I care about this guy?
Who is this guy who he's showing up all over the place in this page? All right, I can probably figure out it's from him. Yeah. Who is he, and why am I making space for him in my inbox? Because that also sets up later on when I start to get emails, a welcome email, subsequent newsletters. What's going to come from Matt? Who is Matt? Tell me a little bit up front, so that way when the name shows up, I go, yeah, Matt, Help Scout, I remember. Okay, what's your deal? Give me a little bit more. Like, prove to me that this email will be a joyous experience that will enrich my life.
From a design perspective, it also has a lot of white space. So you are giving breathing time to really focus on, okay, this is one thing. As you scroll down, this is the next thing. As you scroll down, this is the next thing. It's really easy to be like, I can just shrink that padding a little bit, but it's really good design system here.
I love it. I think this is one of your choices, right, Mike?
Yeah, Earthfolk. This is one where this is individuals who are just focused on kind of things that are earth friendly, being happy. And so what I love about this one is that it's, on the phone. It means you can read it on the go, pretty easy to understand that. What I also like, which we haven't seen from some other ones, which is this 100% free. So Substack is kind of this growing thing, and a lot of Substacks are paid Substacks now. And so this is another way to alternate and say, like, we are 100% free, unsubscribe anytime. If you don't like it, that's fine. You can leave anytime. So those two things together, I think, were some good value propositions that they throw in just to reconfirm that sign up. They also have this what to expect, which is great, which we talked about before. So you have like 4 really easy things that you can scan, and then they show you the design of some recent sends.
I think
let's social proof down here too.
Yep, 155K. The specific number is great too. There's a fun little psychological trick there, and not just being like, they could say like about 150,000 people, 155,047. Huh, that's really specific. The team at 1440 does a very similar thing with their page. It's unusually specific, like down to the subscriber number, which suggests like they paid attention to the details. And also it's more than just, a lot of people read this. No, here's exactly how many. It's interesting. It catches your eye. It looks different. I love to the examples here. This is one of the prettier examples of showcasing what the newsletter looks like without having to go too far down the rabbit hole. I still want people to sign up. I don't want them to get lost looking through all the design, but you can tell here just through some of these examples, the newsletter looks a lot better than your typical newsletter. It clearly looks like something that's been curated, something that is worthy of your time. And they have done a great job showcasing the examples here to make sure this is something you're going to want to make space for. It's unusually well done.
All right. So this is the French one that you had recently posted on LinkedIn, Dan.
Yeah, I love this. There's a couple really good things here. Even if you, like me, speak zero French, you can still figure out a lot of the elements here. 7 minutes, all right. How much time are you going to spend on this? Sign up at the top. But what I really like is you scroll down the page. Another really good example, like the Earthfolk one, where they're showcasing like, what are you going to get? Why are you choosing this newsletter? Showcasing what the product looks like. And what I really love is you go down all the way to the bottom, actually, Justine. They're giving you a lot of the why here. What is it for? There's testimonials. What does it look like? Why do you make space for it? But sometimes on a page like this, what I'll see is, they're showcasing the team behind it. That's awesome. You get to the very bottom. There's another sign up for the newsletter, because sometimes you scroll down the page and they're giving you all these whys. Here's why it's great, all this good stuff. You get to the bottom and then you go, well, where's the sign up? And you have to scroll all the way up, and you're on, mobile, and you're scrolling and scrolling. Any extra friction that I add to the process that might keep me from signing up is going to affect your conversion rate. And my goal here is I want to get people onto this page, and I want them to give us our email address. And if they have to work a little bit harder for it, even if they read it all the way down the page, they might just leave because they can't find the sign up. They get frustrated and they bounce. I know that seems silly. You go, well, they know it's at the top. They must have seen it, but maybe they didn't. Maybe they missed it. Have that sign up at the bottom of the page too, if you have a lot of copy on the page.
Yeah, I love, again, like here, humanizing it, the people that are like behind the email. All right, so this one is one of the coolest, but also one of the most probably complex ones I've seen.
Let me tell you a little about the semaphore page, because it's really interesting. So we've shared a bunch of examples for newsletters that have just one newsletter. That's all you can sign up for, just the one product. Semaphore has a bunch, and they've done some really smart things here. 1, sign up box is at the top, so you have to enter your email address right away. 2, this works great in the US. For those in Europe, for those in Canada, you might want to think a little bit differently because of GDPR or CASL, but in the US, this works just fine. They've already pre-selected the newsletters they think are going to be most valuable for you. So these are the 2 that we think are the best newsletters. They have links out so you can see samples of them if you want. But then if you want to sign up for multiple newsletters, like Justine, will you click on the box that says like Semaphore Economy and Business above? So like if I want to sign up for all of their economy and business newsletters, you check that one box and it selects all of them simultaneously. Because maybe you just want, give me all of those. That's my audience. That's my wheelhouse. That's what I work in. Just give me everything at once. You don't have to check a million of these, which is really useful when you're on a mobile device and multiple newsletters. I got to check and check and check. No. I can just do a one-click kind of sign up here. Super simple. Plus, they really put a lot of their authors and reporters up front in these newsletters, and they make sure Americana with David Weigel. Okay, maybe you follow David Weigel on Twitter. You're not really sure what his newsletter is called, but when you see his name there, okay, I'm connecting the dots between these. So lots of good stuff here. I love that the two main newsletters are also a lot bigger. Like, they have made it very clear, if you're new around here, these are the ones we want you to focus on. These are our most popular editions.
What I probably would have done is, it's not clear to me if I had that sign up button at the very top and these two are pre-selected, I would probably think, oh, those are the two. And then I would sign up, or I'd sign up at the very beginning without really scrolling below. And I think this could have been better done as a multi-step sign up, where you sign up once and then it's like, would you also like these 5, these 3, maybe these people. And so it's more like an onboarding process, like from like Instagram. If you sign up for Instagram, it's like, oh, do you know these 3 people you can follow? You check the box, and those are the 3 that are part of that. And again, this is a very complex, there are so many newsletters here. I don't think most people are going to think, oh, this is what I have to do. But because it's a longer form, and then again, putting the form at the bottom maybe would be really helpful too, to understand, oh, I've checked all the boxes. I'm now subscribed to 16. Like, to me, that'd be like, ooh, that's a lot of newsletters. So I think that multi-step kind of adds like, oh yeah, I'll like that one. And you go to the next step. Oh yeah, I'll that one. You don't really realize that you're subscribed to 16 at that point.
That's a really great point. I wonder if they would benefit from a similar strategy that BriefMe has done with the second, box here at the bottom. But maybe someone from Semaphore can tell us what they've A/B tested on this page and what's working and what's not.
We're being picky. It's already like a great example, so it's not like we're hashing it out right here.
Yeah, no, it's great. I also love how I love it when pages, like, you can tell someone really paid attention to the information design of a page, and they've made a lot of information not feel like a lot of information, because this is so, like, everyone has the frequency, the day of the week, a little bit about what I can expect. Really well done. So this next page is also one that I might have worked with the team that put this together at some point in the past. And since we've shown you a lot of examples from the journalism or the news media world, I wanted to show you one B2B example, because that's the world I typically come from. And so this is from the team at Postmark. And so when we put together this landing page, we tried to follow a lot of Dan's best practices. And so we have the different value props here. Of course, the way that you can sign up. Dan also talked about CAPTCHA, and I can definitely attest to the pain of having your sign-up form hit by bots. It's not fun. It's not something you want to live through. It's not something you want to clean up afterwards. That's definitely something we tried to do. And like, this will be the ultimate test to see if these links work. So what we did is we created this past issues bit here where we linked out to, so you could kind of get that proof and see the newsletters right up in center. And there's a couple ways that I've seen this done. I've seen it done, some email service providers offer a built-in like archive or library. I've seen some people use view as browser links, which have their own set of pros and cons. But a little bit later, Mike's also going to show you, if you're building your emails with Beefree, you can actually just in a couple of clicks turn your Beefree email design into a landing page. You can even host it in Beefree. So we'll show you that in a bit later. But quite a prolific archive here. One of the other possible downfalls to using those view and browser links is if you change email service providers or those links eventually expire. So if you plan to do this, my tip to you, again, having lived through the pain in the past, is think about the long term there and how you want to host those pages for your old newsletters. So
this other thing about view and browser link is it is really accessible and nice to have, especially for a lot of people who I hear all the time, hey, we're reading really good emails, newsletter. Do you have a view and browser I want to share with somebody? I'm always like, can't you just forward the email? Like, that's what email's all about, is just forwarding it on. But they'd rather just like post a link somewhere so that people can see that specific one without forwarding. But the problem with view and browser is specifically the new age ESPs are very dynamic. They use a lot of dynamic variables to create let's say you have a list of 100,000 people, 200,000 people, that ESP would then have to create 200,000 versions that are dynamic for that individual. So a lot of new age ESPs will not create that view and browser list because it's just so complicated and there's a lot of load time that a lot of people just won't hit anyways. So that is something to consider, is if you have any dynamic insertions there, you need to have like a more, what is the version that's everyone going to get that doesn't have the dynamic that you can link here.
It's a really good point. I'll also throw out from a growth perspective. If you're driving someone to one of these pages, make sure there is a sign up box or a call to action on one of those, whether it's a browser link or the website, because you don't want people to hit that dead end of they read this and go, oh, this is really great. All right, moving on to the next thing without actually signing up. I want to make sure we don't lose them. They can come here, they can see the great content, but there should be a box, a link. Maybe it's something that you just, if you're using a view and browser link, for instance, you're just embedding somewhere in your actual newsletter. Hey, did a friend forward you this newsletter? Did someone share this newsletter with you? Click here to sign up. So it drives you back to the landing page. I want to make sure they never hit a dead end where they can't sign up. I always want to get them back to this page to give us their email address.
And then you talked about the Scoop one, Mike.
Yeah, I think this is a good example of using your products and your, I wouldn't say your popularity, but you're known for something, right? And people are coming to maybe buy, I think, crystals and skincare and whatever else Gwyneth is selling here, makeup. But because that newsletter becomes so large and you have a voice, that people actually tend to sign up for the newsletter because they like the news and your personality after a while. So even though you might be a retailer or a nonprofit or, outdoor enthusiast, your newsletter doesn't just have to be copy. It can be products interwoven with, different articles. And that's what Goop does really well, is they have a lot of voice, a lot of opinion, and then they have product recommendations. And so when you read the Goop newsletter, you get all of that. You get kind of what's inside Gwyneth's mind, or whoever Gwyneth's team's ghostwriting for her inside that. And this is why I like this page, because it's kind of like about her. She's a celebrity, but it doesn't have to be celebrity focused. It can be anything. And then it kind of has that inverted pyramid where you have the header, the supporting text, you got the call to action, you got the input. So there's a few things on this page that I think work really well.
Mike, we really should have tried with your landing page a version of the testimonial from the person who made the newsletter in the first place. We should have a photo of you on the RGE page that goes, as one of the co-founders of RGE. It's the only newsletter I go to when I'm trying to find out about really good emails out there. The self-testimonial is a uniquely Gwyneth Paltrow move. I don't necessarily recommend that strategy. I will say I do love, and this works for a lot of, in particular, folks who have an e-commerce strategy. You'll note right above the sign-up box that there is an additional little lure. Hey, when you sign up, you're going to get a free beauty item with your next purchase. There's an extra reason to give us your email address. You see this so often on e-commerce sites, especially right now, this next 2 weeks. Hey, sign up right now and you'll get our Black Friday deal, and a week early, that sort of thing, when you give us your email address. Fantastic. If you have the means to offer something, go for it. It gives people one more reason to hand over an email address and say, yeah, I'll give this a shot.
Stephanie pointed out in the chat, there's some consumer psychology also, where if you are going to use images of people where their face is towards, so if you want to have an action, you want to point their face towards that action. So even though she's looking at you here, if you just flipped her face, you still have her text on the left, flipped her face to the right. She's now kind of a little bit more positioned to look at the sign up. It's just like where your eye movement works for design theory. Yeah, great point, Stephanie, on that one.
If you've got an awesome newsletter landing page, and you might be thinking to yourself, a lot of the questions that y'all are asking actually in the questions tab are popping up here too. So there's other stuff you want to consider. The landing page is just one part of a whole subscriber journey. It might just be one part of your email growth or email conversion strategy. So you want to think about the post-signup experience too. There's a thank you page that you're going to go to. There's usually at least one welcome email, maybe a welcome series. You want to make sure that the messaging and the overall value is similar. It doesn't sound like that person is talking to two different companies or two different people or two different newsrooms. All really important stuff. And I actually want to walk you through one of my favorite examples that, thanks to Dan, I got introduced to recently. There's this newsletter called Strategy Breakdowns, and they follow a lot of the same great best practices we've talked about earlier. set expectations about how long the emails are going to take, how often they're sent, all that kind of good stuff. And so after I signed up, I'm going to take you through what my experience looked like after I signed up for this newsletter. First of all, I got what I later learned to be, I think it's powered by Beehive and Sparkloop, is this additional newsletters. And I believe that this is actually a monetization strategy. I'm not super familiar with newsrooms and how this work. I'm sure Dan could offer some insight here. But I really like that they gave me this option to subscribe to some additional, maybe related topical newsletters.
If you're on Substack, they have an opportunity to do these post-sign-up recommendations automatically. Beehive does this. There's also a company called Sparkloop that does this as well. So you can recommend other newsletters. Maybe you have some sort of partnerships with other newsletters. Hey, we'll recommend yours, and you can do the same for us. And yeah, Justine, to your point, if you're doing these through certain platforms like Beehive or Substack, or Beehive or Sparkloop, you can actually say, I'd like to get paid to recommend other newsletters. And so you can choose ones that are out there. There's certain marketplaces where you can go and say, hey, these guys will pay us $1 an email address if we send a sign up their way. And if it's relevant to your audience, there may even be a revenue component to this as well, which is super interesting.
That is super interesting. And next time that someone tells you email is dead, you can tell them that you can get paid for helping other companies sign up more newsletters. Yeah, and so if you click the next button, or even maybe later, this is the other thing that really stood out to me about being such a subscriber focused. It's one of those things that's a win-win, where it was beneficial to me as the user or the subscriber. It's also going to be a massive win to the company. And I feel like when those two things happen, that's when the magic of email really shows itself, is when you can find that middle ground between serving your user and serving your goals as an organization. So I'm a Gmail user. When I clicked that open Gmail link, it didn't just do what I expected, which was to open my Gmail like in a new tab. What it did is it actually opened my Gmail with a pre-programmed search string, which Dan and Mike told me had been known to become sniper links, but I'm a very non-violent person in my professional and personal lives. I don't like the idea of a sniper link, so we're just going to call it a deep link or a secret link, right? But what it did is it automatically searched and filtered all the other crud out of my inbox and just popped up this specific welcome email that they had just sent me, which made it so easy for me to click in. And then I also just really liked the welcome email. It arrived right away. It set more expectations about what I can expect in that. It also gave me some tips for making sure that the email lands in my inbox. It gave me some ways to what they call join the conversation, to interact with the publishers on LinkedIn and Twitter. And then it also gave me a way that I could dive in right away and start learning and interacting with the content, which is the sample of the most popular posts.
So a couple things here, Justine. I'm pretty sure there's probably some deliverability people that have joined us today. If you can get engagement within 10, 15 seconds of sending the email, it just tells your inbox, Gmail, Yahoo, whatever, Outlook, that this is a sender that you respect, that you are expecting. What they do, if you go back to that deep link, is that by using that filter, not only does it jump you straight to the email, but it doesn't allow you to see any other emails that are in your inbox, right? It's filtering out all the distractions. So when you get there, you're like, oh yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'll click in, and then I get the, whatever from that. So if you go to the next slide that you're just showing, another thing that they do really well, and again, this is not landing page-esque, but since we're here, why not? Let's just talk about it. This last line, which is PPS, don't forget to reply and say hello. This is another engagement metric that can boost your inbox rates as well. So if you're sending an email, a newsletter specifically, getting that first response can really help your inbox placement. And they
have it in there twice. The first one says first reply, hey, to this email, right at the bottom. Yeah. And so the other thing I would recommend though too, is if you're asking people to reply, please, oh please, do not use no reply, and please monitor that inbox, and then please reply to the reply. would be my ask, is to think this through to the logical end of the interaction, because I think it's one of those ways that you can just delight subscribers and users too. A lot of people don't expect to get replies to their replies. And I can't tell you how many times I've been on the brand side, replied to someone who wasn't expecting a reply. And it kind of makes their day.
It's also, as you go through all these, one last thing,
Yeah.
you can draw a direct line between the sign up page and then the welcome email and what you're going to get afterwards. So it's all connected in a really logical way. One of the mistakes that I see in particular on like the e-commerce side is people might have lots of different, and Mike's going to talk about this in a second, all the different ways you can get people onto these landing pages, paid, that sort of thing. But you have lots of different, ads running on other done channels like Facebook, Google to get people to the page. But then there's one generic page for 25 different variations of the marketing copy you've been pushing. There's this, particular message you're pushing on Google, this message you're pushing on Instagram. They all go to one generic landing page and one generic welcome series. And that reader's going, it's kind of weird. I thought I was signing up for something that was going to be more about this. And then the subsequent landing page and welcome series didn't have anything to do with what I thought I was going to get. So you may have to create different versions of landing pages or alternate versions of a welcome series that tie back to that initial marketing message or that push. Example of this, if we were doing, for instance, a special newsletter after this webinar, well, we would want to create a special landing page through Beefree that's tied to like whatever thing that we're going to send you afterwards. And then we want to make a special welcome series and not just push them into a generic thing. Like, let's make sure all the dots are connected. So that way we get people into the funnel and get people engaged with that thing that we promised them up front. It's just a really nice example, start to finish, of how they connected the dots here. There's no part where a reader gets lost and goes, hang on, I saw an ad that made it seem like it was going to be about X and now I'm getting Y. Is this what I signed up for?
I love it. Couldn't agree more.
And then for this one, I think I'd look in the world of your 4 quadrants. You have owned, you have earned, you have paid. And paid right here, this is table stakes for a lot of people that are trying to start new. You might not have the 20,000 readers yet. You just know that you have a good concept and your friends and family have told you it's great. And you have, some starter money to say, okay, let's throw $500, $1,000, if that, at some PPC ads or some Facebook ads. You can go into the ad library for a lot of these places, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, they all have ad libraries. So you can see what your competitors are doing also to drive awareness for their newsletters. And so, you'll see that this is how this is done. I was general manager of a company that owned a newsletter called Home Talk. Home Talk has over 20 million subscribers. They had really figured out how to manage this portion of their 4 quadrants. So they were essentially getting readers for pennies on the dollar. And then those readers turn into ad revenues and click and affiliate revenues as they get more engaged in the newsletter. So there's, again, lots of calculations to make sure that you're actually making money off of this, that you're bringing in the right kind of readers that stay along, that click on your links, that are engaged with the advertisers. But if you can do it right, you can grow your list pretty quickly. And then for this one, this is a great one just as to help segment your readers. So once they come through, it's like, great, I know that you want to read my stuff, but it'd be easier for me to tailor future newsletters or understand what gets you going in the morning if you tell me, right? So this is your zero-party data, getting that put into your CRM. And essentially you can then sell against that to advertisers too. So you say, hey, the people who actually read our newsletter are CEOs, investment bankers, outdoor enthusiasts. They have, whatever role. So if a B2B, this is a lot more what you try to do, but anybody that has a large publication, when I was running Lonely Planet's publication, was essentially trying to sell how many people lived in that home, what their household income was, and you get that from ComScore data, but you can also get it from zero-party data and what they're interested in, where they want to go. That it will tell you essentially, based on their travel experiences. Justine, I know you're a big traveler. That if you're going to Tokyo, you probably have a bigger budget than if you're going to Paris, Idaho, is what we talked about. Paris.
Indiana, yeah.
Paris, Indiana. Like not to dunk on Paris, Indiana. It's just probably not the most luxurious place compared to a Tokyo. So again, there's different things you can ask here to get better targeted with your advertisers, your content, a few other things.
This is on the thank you page, right?
Yeah, this is a great from Work Week. You sign up for one of their newsletters, you're going to get a post-sign-up series of questions that they're asking you to answer. I love the friendliness of this too. For instance, a lot of times there'll be these questions that you'll see after someone signs up, and they feel a little bit invasive, like, tell us how much money you make. And you're like, why? What do you need that information for? And I like how they say things like, what city do you live in or closest to? We're planning events too. Like, oh, of course, like there's a reason for me to hand over this information, because if I like your newsletter and you're planning events around marketing or media or DTC or whatever it is, yeah, like I might be interested in coming to those. So I'm happy to tell you where I live, because tell me when something's happening near me that might benefit me in my career. So I love that there's a friendliness to it. It's just nice to see teams that are thoughtfully asking these sorts of questions, and also proof that you don't have to ask right away. If this was on the initial sign-up form, the conversion rate would go way down, but they're going to be able to capture a not insignificant portion of their audience's data afterwards, or they can do it in a later welcome email. They can do it on their site through, you signed up for a webinar, we're asking a few or more pieces of information, syncing that data back to our ESP. There's lots of different ways you can do it. Plus, if you have a registered user already, maybe that's through some sort of registration wall on your website. Maybe you're using something like OAuth on your website or Google One Tap to collect email addresses. You may already have their email, and on a form like this, we don't even have to necessarily ask all the same questions, because we've captured some of that data already. So then we can get a little bit more granular and go, all right, we captured this data because of OAuth. They logged in through Facebook. They shared a couple pieces of information around first name, last name, location with us. What else do we want to ask now? Because we've already gotten them to share some of that information with us. So lots of things you can do to really optimize this page, and then optimize later on for all the great emails you're going to send and the segments you're going to send to.
So I'm going to say, Mike, do you want to show us how to create landing pages really quickly with Beefree? Because we have a ton of questions, and I want to make sure that we can get around to those.
So we threw this together because, that like Dan said, we live in that quadrant of the earned. So people come in, they join the newsletter from essentially when you land on the site for the first time, you have a pop-up that asks if you want to join the newsletter. If you click out of it, then good luck trying to get back to get on the newsletter. So this is a good point that, this webinar got us to get off our butts and actually build a landing page. So this is one we built. So we have some copy here that hopefully drives people onto why. We've got example of what the email looks like. We have some social proof that it's read by over 250,000 people at this point. We've got, our form. To me, I can still need to work on this form. I feel like I don't need to ask for last name. Most people, I don't call them by their full proper name when I'm addressing them in our newsletter. So there are some things to take off there. When the next email drops, this is a nice little fun thing we added. What's in it for you? So 1, 2, and 3, and here are some links to some past newsletters, and then again following that with the form at the bottom that matches the exact same form at the top. To do this, essentially what you can do is you can create landing pages in Beefree, which is pretty simple. You have your Beefree editor, just like you have for your newsletter or email editor there. You can edit the page. You can do your drag and drop. Within this, I'll open up the editor here, and essentially you don't need to know how to code, because you can do 2 columns, 3 columns, 4 columns, whatever you can do. I have mobile view, which is hidden here. So it's showing if you go mobile, that's what it'll look like. So it's pretty easy, but what I want to show you here is if I wanted to add another, let's say another link to our list of emails as examples. This is an example of turning a email into a landing page. So if you go back to your emails that you're building in Beefree, you have this option to generate as a page. So you can go here and click generate as a page. It'll do some magic as it thinks and computes. It says the page is created. You can go back. This is now where I can edit certain things. So if I wanted to say, I want actually a row here that talks about the form that we just filled in. I'm going to put that maybe right here.
Nice.
And people can fill that in as they read. So I can save that. And then I'll go back to so again, this is great for SEO. It's all this content here that we've already written, great keywords in this. Go back to the detail page, and I'll click on publish. And publishing this will give me a link where I can rewrite the URL here if I have a hosted thing, or I can export this and I could give this to my developer as the HTML code or whatever, and they could host that in Webflow or Drupal or whatever you're using, WordPress. But for now, this is the hosted page here. So I can go back and take this URL, add it back to my landing page, so that this is a link from there. So I mean, we created a landing page and can add, with a form on there, and can add it back to that the newsletter landing page in a matter of a minute. So really quickly on that side.
We haven't gotten to it already, and I'd be remiss if we didn't mention it. The URL piece of this for any of these pages, whether it's an article or former newsletter that you've published or your actual landing page, make sure you have URLs that are easy to remember and share. So often, you might appear on a podcast, you're doing a thing with another organization, something like this. I like to be able to say on one of these, like, hey, if you want to sign up for my newsletter, go to inboxcollective.com/newsletter and you can sign up. Something that's really simple to remember. And if you have to have unique versions for unique situations, you're speaking at a conference and you want to have a special version of your landing page that also links to a welcome series with a resource that you created just for that, that conference. Great. You can create a version of that with a unique URL that's easy to remember and share. And Mike, the page looks really nice. I'd say the one other thing I'll mention to the team is, or to everyone joining today, that's the first version of a page like this. And there's going to be opportunities to optimize it and make it better over time. I'm looking at that bottom section with all the copy around the different newsletter examples. Over time, we can look at and go, do people click out to those? Do they not? Do we need to shorten that copy and tighten up? What about the color contrast at the top of the page? Do we need to make changes to make that page? Can we have lots of bells and whistles, or do we want to keep things a little bit simpler? Maybe, you look at a version of that page and go, actually, people get distracted by the animations. They're really enticing, but they're not signing up. What happens if we try a simpler version of that page? Does that improve our conversion rate? So it's just an MVP. The most important thing is that you have a great landing page you can get out into the world as quickly as possible. Then you can make it better from there and optimize it to make sure that people who land on it actually take the next step and sign up.
All right. Well, I'm going to hit this start live answer button and it should pop up on the page here. So this is a question about giving people too many choices. What do we think about those of us who have multiple newsletters that we hope people will sign up for, and best practices for encouraging people to sign up for more than one?
I'll throw out, because I have a lot of newsrooms that I work with who have multiple newsletters. There's two pieces of this. One, make sure you're evaluating on a regular basis the newsletters that you have and make sure they're all still really valuable. I've worked with teams that'll go, we have 125 newsletters. Do we need to have all of these? The answer is probably not. But on a page like that, you want to do some sort of prioritization. So let's say you have 20 newsletters. You might not show all 20 right away. You might show or hide certain ones based on a reader's engagement on your website or what they like, where they've come from. That reader who came from the sports section, and we might prioritize the sports newsletters higher up versus the reader who came via the news section. You could have a page that has everything. That's okay. Or I loved Mike's example earlier. Maybe we want to do it like a flow where it's, here's the newsletter we want you to sign up for first, and then here's secondary newsletters we'll recommend afterwards to get you to take a next step. But as a basic MVP, it's okay to have multiple options. Let's just make sure it's easy to sign up for them. A big mistake I see are websites that have, for every newsletter, their own independent sign-up box. So we have 20 newsletters and you have to enter your email address 20 different times. Want to make sure at least stuff like that is taken care of, so that way, if you do have to sign up for multiple newsletters, we don't make it a pain.
Yeah, don't make me work for it, right?
Yeah, one thing on that, if you are sending multiple newsletters from the same list, that means that when somebody goes to unsubscribe through the list header, so like in Gmail, it's the very top, it's not the very bottom of that link. It's like Gmail gives the ability for somebody to unsubscribe. If you are not delineating your newsletters from your ESP, when they click unsubscribe, it unsubscribes them from every newsletter that they're part of. So you need to set that up with your ESP to say, hey, this is this newsletter, this is a newsletter, this is a newsletter, so they don't unsubscribe for everything. So that's just a quick side note.
Next one, any tips for a brand new newsletter launch with no samples and no social proof yet?
To me, this is where you let your copy or your content shine. So this is your example. You're going to show off what you are writing, how long it takes you to write it, how much research you do on this. Like, there's other kind of social proof that you can give to justify why somebody should give over your email address.
I will often recommend to teams that maybe they create a beta version of the newsletter that exists before it goes live, share it with some colleagues, some friends, people in your industry, people you know, in whatever community that you're going to be sharing this with, and go, I'd love your feedback. What do you think about this? What do you like about it? And use that feedback to inform the first version of the copy. So that way you're not starting with your guess, I hope this is what it'll be valuable for, but I've actually gotten a little bit of feedback. And then, of course, as it gets out in the world, you improve it, you make it better over time.
Yeah, I totally see this is a situation where when people joke about like, well, my mom likes it, like I would lean into that.
I'll add that with the RGE newsletter landing page. My mom likes it.
If we had a photo of all of your moms just at the bottom with like a big thumbs up.
We'll do it. Uh-huh.
All right. How would your landing page approach change if you have different newsletters for different audiences?
We're going to have to make an assumption here that this person is thinking that you might have multiple newsletters promoted to different audiences on the same page. Is if you have individual pages, well, I'm just customizing each of those based on the specific audience, different copy, certainly different testimonials or social proof. That example we shared from earlier, there was one at the bottom that said from strategy breakdowns that showed all the different tech companies. We have readers at Snap and Meta and Google who read our newsletter. That's great, but if the newsletter was about cooking or whatever, I'm going to be less interested that someone at Instagram reads this newsletter. I'm much more interested that a cookbook author or somebody from Instagram likes this newsletter. So you can always make those sorts of changes. As far as one main page, I would say maybe you want to have different versions that you're linking to from different places. So I shared an example earlier, hey, someone's coming via our lifestyle section. We might, like that semaphore example, instead of showcasing the newsletters at the top, maybe I want to showcase the lifestyle newsletters at the top because I know they came via our lifestyle section. They're probably going to want to see lifestyle newsletters first and then newsletters about news or sports or business, later on. So you can always modify these based on the audience and where they might be coming from.
If you have an A/B testing tool like Mutiny or Optimizely, you could essentially say, based off of the enrichment data that we have of this user or some of the indicators they've given us, we're going to actually have the same URL, but that URL looks different based off of where they came from with the UTM parameters or the industry that we got from a third-party system. And so, like you said, technology shows up first, but then for somebody else's cooking and so forth.
Hey everyone, Dan Oshinsky from Inbox Collective here. Thanks so much for joining us for the webinar. We got a lot of amazing questions, so many questions. We couldn't get to all of them in the time allotted, but I wanted to make sure you got the answers that you need. So I want to walk through a few extra bonus questions and see if I can get you a few quick answers to help you out with your landing page strategy. All right, first off, we got a lot of questions around the demographic data that you're asking for as part of a newsletter sign up. Should you just ask for an email address? Should you ask for something more? Mike mentioned it on the call. Asking for something like first name might make sense in certain cases, depending on how you're going to utilize that data. You may also want to ask around information like location, job title, interests. Depends on the newsletter and what you're going to use them for. Where and how do you collect the information? So you can do it a few ways. One is it could exist on the initial sign up form. Someone signs up, first name, last name, job title, something like that is right there on the form. That's possible. I found if you ask afterwards, you may get a pretty decent response rate without scaring away some of the users who think, I'd like to sign up for the newsletter, but I don't want to share additional information. So directing people to a survey or something afterwards could be really valuable. There are tools out there that are useful for this, like in the newsletter space, things like Write Message are really good for this. Certain email platforms like Beehive have made it really easy to collect information as part of a post-signup survey. You can also do this a little bit more manually, driving people to a Google form or SurveyMonkey and connecting the dots using a tool like Zapier, for instance. So that way you collect the information you need and then get it into your ESP. As for how you'll use the information, you're using this information usually in a couple ways. One is it may inform your content strategy. I just did this with a client the other day. They'd set up a post-signup survey, and we were looking through the results and realized that just in the answers to one question they had asked readers, in their newsletter, which was around personal development and growth, what's one thing you want to get better at the next year? And we saw several people repeat the same answer. And it was pretty obvious, hey, this is where we need to be focusing on in terms of content strategy. The other opportunities are around maybe something like a media kit for newsrooms, for instance, that I work with that have an ad strategy. Collecting some of that information helps you fill out the media kit, so you can go to sponsors and say, here's who's on our audience. Here are the people we have. Here's why you want to work with us. Most commonly, though, you're going to see people use these guides, use this information to try to figure out how to segment your audience a little bit better. Hey, we have a special offer coming to people who have this job title, who live in this area, who are interested in this content. Great. The better we can segment the audience, the better we can try to target the right people with the right offers. If you're thinking around asking other questions to understand your audience's identity, so I might want to know who they are, what they're motivated by. You can do this a few ways. You could ask open-ended questions and try to sort through some of the answers on a manual basis. I've also found a lot of the AI tools are pretty good for this too. Download a bunch of open-ended responses, feed it into a ChatGPT type of tool, and tell it to spit out some common themes or ideas. That could help you shape your strategy. You might also want to ask around things like motivation or interests or certain behaviors. Make those multiple choice questions and then tag or identify certain users based on how they respond. We got a really good question. I'll just read this word for word. Our marketing efforts, especially for event promotions, rely on demographic information collected at sign up. Any recommendations for how to get users to answer those on a clean landing page? What should we do there? So you can do this a few different ways. I loved the example that we shared from Workweek, how they were really upfront with users about how they were going to utilize that data. If you have something like a event promotion or a lead magnet, the more you can put the questions in plain English, here's what we're asking for and why, the likelier people are going to be to respond. We also want to be careful about asking too many questions on a form. If there are required fields that people have to fill out, and there's too many of them, you may find that readers just don't go through the process. Now, you could always make some of these questions required and some voluntary. Sometimes readers will voluntarily choose to share the information. That could be an opportunity as well. In terms of a sign-up page that links to a larger form, we've got some questions from people who said it's important we capture more demographic information. What should we do? We have a sign-up page, but then it's too much information to put on the page. Where do we go? I would say, link out to an external page like a Google form, SurveyMonkey, that sort of thing. If you can embed it on your website, that's great. So they don't have to go to a form. You keep the branding as consistent as possible. But tell people up front, like with any survey, here's what you're getting into. You're going to need to answer a couple questions. Here's why. It should take a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Set people's expectations, put them in the right place so that way they know, here's what I'm getting into when I start this survey, when I'm giving you a little bit of data and why I'm giving you this data. It's, the more that I understand about why, the more likely I am to complete the process. We got some really good questions around privacy policies. What should we do there? I do think it's worth having, in a lot of cases, a privacy policy on your site. Maybe that's in your footer. Maybe it's just in a line of text that's small below a sign-up box. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. You don't need to have, a 9,000 word bit of legalese below the sign-up box. But if you can have a link to the privacy policy and, the most important stuff. Hey, the newsletter's free. We respect your privacy. We don't sell your data. We want to make sure that that you can unsubscribe at any time. All those things are really, really important, but you can link to those within a privacy policy. Makes the lawyers happy while also fulfilling legal requirements in most places. This is the part where all of the lawyers in the Oshinsky family would want me to remind you that I am not a lawyer. Check with your own lawyers about this, but that's usually a good policy. Got some questions around upsell funnels. So someone signs up and then we're trying to upsell them as they go through a welcome series or an automation to something else. You came in for a free webinar and now we're going to upsell you to a paid course. Totally fine if you're doing that as part of the process. The more data that we can collect up front about who they are and what they're interested in or what they need help with, probably the better that you can customize that funnel to sell the thing that you are trying to sell. We got a question from someone who said, I know a few teams who post all of their past newsletters on their website. I get the point of doing it, but also want to encourage the exclusivity of having to sign up to see the full thing. Thoughts? If that's the case, and that's totally fine, you don't have to link to every newsletter. Maybe link to one recent edition as a sample. Or I love when teams just have a screenshot of the product. It doesn't have to be fancy. I just want to have a sense that whatever I'm signing up for is more than your average newsletter. It's not just going to be the same old thing. It's actually special. It's worth my time. And so a visual indication there, a screenshot of the product that, hey, you can kind of see what we're getting into. It's different, it's unique, it's special, it's worth your time. That's all I really care about. Now, if you do want to link out to past editions of a newsletter, totally fine. A lot of teams will have maybe a link at the bottom of a page or below the sign up box. Hey, you want to see a recent edition? Click here. If you have a couple editions listed, maybe that goes towards the bottom of the page. Doesn't have to be the number one thing on the page. What I care about most is what is this newsletter? Who is it for? Why does it matter to me that there's a sign up box, that the page is protected? CAPTCHA, honeypot, verification tool, that you're doing the basics. And if you want to add something like a couple links towards the bottom to recent editions, totally fine. But you can move those towards the bottom of the page because for a lot of readers, giving them just those basics is going to be enough. For readers who want to go deeper, who want to explore it a little bit more before they signed up, that's all right too, but we don't have to put it at the very top of the page. I don't want to make extra work for people who are ready to sign up right away. Last thing, we got some requests from people who said they wanted to see examples of other newsletters, like that Semaphore example, who might have multiple newsletters on a page. There's a lot of good ones out there. The Washington Post and New York Times, certainly. I really like the Atlantic's page. It's done really well. The New Yorker's comes to mind. The Telegraph over in the UK. And the Trace. They do a newsletter here in the US around gun violence in America. Multiple newsletters on the page. They showcase the product in a really nice way. And there's an interesting case where their weekly product, not their daily newsletter, their weekly is actually the flagship newsletter. And so there's a cool example of how they prioritize that to make sure hey, this is the one we think most readers would want to sign up for. All right. Thanks so much again for joining us. Thanks for all the questions. Amazing that we had so many questions. We couldn't get to them all live in the session. Hope this answered a few of your questions. If you have more, reach out to me, Dan@inboxcollective.com. Always happy to answer and always happy to point you in the right direction. Thanks so much.